Because I'm bad at managing tabs. Not as bad as Arthur.
What was he at 210 tabs or something like that?
200 and some odd.
I don't know why Chrome keeps crashing.
Yeah. Why does my computer act slow? I don't know. we love you, Arthur, really. We do, but good grief, man. Oh well. I'm not sure what to talk about today. Do you have any ideas of what we should talk about today? Because there's nothing that I know about that's going on anywhere that would be of interest to our listeners.
I don't know. You have nothing going on in your life right now. I have nothing going on in my life right now.
Yeah.
What would we talk about?
All quiet on the Western Front. Hey, guess what?
What's that, sir?
Dad's home.
Hey, Dad's home. That's why people weren't listening to us last week, is it not? That's
right. That is why. That's one of the many reasons why people weren't listening to us last week. Yeah, he's been home for a week now. He's doing really well. His recovery is continuing apace, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
He's up and down and all around and mobile and all that kind of stuff sufficiently so that he does not require minding 100% of the day. 80, 75%, somewhere in there maybe, but not 100% of the day.
So you get a smoke break, basically.
Yeah, basically. It's like, yeah, I can have my two 15s in half hour.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But it is quite the job now, as you may well imagine. I find myself pretty much performing the job I left in order to not have a job for a while.
I'm sorry.
It's it's one of those things. We have the little outbursts. We have our little med management. We have our little activity time. We have our group therapy session. We have our the whole 9 yards. It's like, but no, he's doing well. He continues to impress with his recovery. Apparently, his bed sore is making quite the bit of progress in healing up, and I mean, he's got a wound vac on that now rather than on his incision on his belly, because that's healed up nicely.
Mm-hmm.
There's but a small portion of concern, and it is currently covered by a Band-Aid.
Oh, nice. The surgical dressing of choice, of course.
Yes, exactly. There's been a couple of visits to various doctors and whatnot. Mm-hmm. We did discover one small problem, which explains somewhat a little bit of the pain he's been having in his right leg, which is his weaker leg right now.
Right.
It is a very, very small blood clot, which is currently being treated with blood thinner.
Okay.
So, nothing major at this point. Nobody seemed overly concerned.
No.
So, but yeah, other than that, he's doing quite well, and he's getting, we were told, that in order to aid the healing process, and you can pass this information on if you want, I guess.
Okay.
But in order to heal or to help the healing process with what they call major wounds, which is what the incision and the bed sore count as once they get to a certain point. In order to do that, you want to put in about 100 milligrams of protein a day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
And I don't know if you've ever calculated that and how much protein that actually is.
That is a substantial amount, given the amount of protein in a 4-ounce steak.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you the rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. An egg is about 9 grams of protein.
Right.
Did I say 100 milligrams or 100 grams? I meant 100 grams.
Okay.
Yeah, that's still a substantial amount.
Right.
But yeah,
I heard grams, so I don't know what you actually said.
Okay, good. An egg, a regular egg, fried egg or scrambled or boiled or whatever, is 9 milligrams of protein. And so the number of eggs you would need per day
mm-hmm.
is 11 eggs a day, basically.
Mm-hmm.
not that we're giving him 11 eggs a day, but yeah. So we went out, and, I mean, immediately upon hearing that, number one, okay, well, let's get him healed up. Went out and we bought these new Ensure drinks. You know, they call them shakes. They're not really shakes. But there's these new Ensure things coming out called Ensure Max that are like 30 grams of protein for just a regular, you know, like 8-ounce drink. So, and they're extremely low sugar. Like they're almost no sugar. So that's great because he's diabetic, you know.
Right.
And low fat and low sodium and all. They're like they were designed specifically for him and became available on the wider market about a week before he came out of hospital. So we've been buying those up for him for a little while. You know, he gets a couple of those a day, and we got some protein bars and we got some other stuff, and you know, tons of things. There's a lot of things. We've looked at all the things, ladies and gentlemen who might be listening. We have looked at all the things which he might potentially eat that have protein in them. We know which ones.
So you are begging people not to deluge you with suggestions at this point.
That's right. Please do not pelt me with suggestions. We have the full list of things which contain protein, which he will eat. So we're good in that. And then we found out today from his other doctors, because they changed all these meds while he was in both the hospital and the nursing facility. Mm-hmm. They changed all these meds. I mean, he's got like 2 meds that he used to take before that he still takes, and everything else is different at this point.
Okay. So
we had to consult with his physician, you know, his primary care physician, about the meds and what should be adjusted or changed, or if anything. And apparently his primary care physician heard that Dad had been in the hospital and immediately went on vacation to Alaska. So, I mean, maybe he knew he was coming. I don't know. So we had to do that nurse thing, you know, like your nurse that you had that was pretending to be a doctor.
Right.
Nurse Eric. Well, this is his other nurse. This is Nurse Susan or something like that. Susanna? Nurse Susanna, something. Anyway, much the same capacity as Nurse Eric. But she looked at things and whatnot and went, no, it doesn't look like it needs to be changed for now, but we'll schedule you in for when the doctor gets back and do a second review, and that'll be fine, and it's all good to go for now. So just keep doing what you're doing. And oh, by the way, vitamin C is really helpful in healing large wounds like that. Mm-hmm. So now we're going, okay, what can we give him that's got a lot of vitamin C in it too?
That also doesn't have any sugar in it.
Right, exactly.
Because all your good sources.
Yeah, oranges, too much sugar. So we've got kale. We've got lots of kale. Mm-hmm. I don't like kale. I really don't like kale. We did some looking around, and it turns out that this miracle shake we found for him, also has a lot of vitamin C in it. It's like 35% of his daily allowance of vitamin C is right there. And that's on top of the multivitamin he's taking, which has 100% of his daily allowance of vitamin C. So I think we've got the vitamin C covered. This is the kind of stuff I've been doing the last 2 weeks. Is, you know, organizing his meds, making sure he gets those on time, keeping track of his blood pressure and his glucose level and all that, making sure those are right. Tracking his injections, tracking all the other stuff, you know, how much protein he's getting in a day, and you know, all that kind of thing. Plus, making sure he gets around the house safely, and you know, taking him back and forth to numerous appointments and shepherding him through those, and you know, loading him into the wheelchair and then into the car, and then you know, back into the wheelchair and then back onto the walker, and then you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think I've had approximately 16 hours of sleep in the last week and a half.
Oh, that's not bad. It's double digits. That's good.
Yeah, it's double digits. So the Brian that you have this evening at your recording disposal is a Brian who knows he is on a schedule, because there are other things that have to happen tonight before Dad goes to bed. Mm-hmm. And also a Brian that is pretty frazzled at this point. But he does have a father who is getting better, so that counts.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah, that makes up for everything else. And this, it's just, you can assume at this point, unless I bring it up again, that everything is going well and he's all healing up and whatnot. There's not really a lot left to discuss about it. He's just making the progress he needs to make. I will update you again when all his assistive equipment has gone away. But between now and then, just assume everybody that he is doing well and things continue going well. So there you go. That's the last dad update for a while. I threw $1 at something earlier this week.
Yeah, did you?
I did. I threw a whole $1 because I wanted to participate in the discussion that was going on below. Apparently, 1,000 crazy people.
At least 1,000 crazy people.
What has happened to you?
Cow. Well, like you, I am extremely frazzled right now. But on sort of an opposite end of the mood spectrum, I suppose.
Right.
It has been an eventful 2 weeks since last we recorded.
It has. And that's, again, this is the reason we didn't have a show out last week.
Right? So, among other things, I'll do the little stuff first, and then we'll build to the big one. Because I know a lot of people out there know that Allie and I have been trying to put together a move. So, we officially have an apartment up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. We have a moving date. We have a lease agreement. Allie has been accepted to college, so she can go back to school.
It's funny to me that you have now classified these particular pieces of information as the little stuff.
Yeah, well,
we're moving to a different state. We have to be there in 2 weeks. My girlfriend is going back to college to get her degree, and those are the little things in my life right now.
Right? Yeah.
Little things.
Well,
they don't matter.
So let's see. This episode goes out on the 28th, right? Next Thursday?
That sounds like it might be right.
Okay. So I have no idea where this is going to be by that point. I launched my Kickstarter for my book, which we have talked about before, on Tuesday the 19th. That is 2 days ago. At 9 a.m. local time, Central Time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I've explained the whole book before, and you know what it's about because you're editing the damn thing, so you know what the
Learn to be a better GM and get yelled at the same time.
Yeah,
That's what the book is about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. So, launched it with a pledge goal, it's a Kickstarter, so, we got to hit a certain funding level, and then the project funds, and so we figured we launched for a $6,000 goal, and pie in the sky, we were shooting for $20,000 by the end. Okay.
You missed.
Yeah, we missed. We missed fast, too.
Yeah.
So I go ahead and, because you can't schedule to launch a Kickstarter. This was the first this has been such an experience. Okay. We put together the whole Kickstarter page. I made a video, we wrote it up. Jim McClure from Third Act Publishing, he gave me sort of a spiel as to what needed to be on the Kickstarter page and how to put it together. And I, of course, translated that into my own words and built a nice Kickstarter page, spent the whole weekend looking at it, make sure it was all good, submit it to Kickstarter so that they can approve it. And then it's just sitting there waiting to launch. And you can't just schedule the launch. You actually have to hit the button. And, once I hit the button, there were a few things that had to be done. You have to tell everyone it's live. I have an email list going out, so you have to email all of them. And then, I put up a post on my website, and I also changed the banner ad on my website to tell people I had a book, and I had to tell my mother and put a post on Facebook and this and that and the other thing. So 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, hit the launch button. And then I immediately start doing all of the other stuff I have to do, putting up a post, which it was mostly written. I just kind of had to shoot it, but I didn't want to schedule that because God forbid something goes wrong when I'm launching the Kickstarter and it takes 15 minutes to launch and the post goes. So because I can't schedule the Kickstarter to launch, I have to do everything manually after that. So doing everything manually. And I got a message 10 minutes later from, well, I got several in my Discord chat and from Jim. And they're like, have you looked at your numbers yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't had time. I'm still doing all the marketing. Like, get off my back. Within 8 minutes, we funded.
Oh.
I think it was 8 minutes.
That long, huh?
Yeah. 8 minutes, we were at $6,000.
I seem to remember you and I both thought it would take at least 48 hours to get that far.
Yeah. Well, this was the thing. Okay, this is the thing. We sat down. Not you and I, me and Jim.
Right.
But you and I also discussed this. Mm-hmm. We sat down and we projected based on interaction and my guess at my fan engagement and all of that, where this project would land. And we figured out what the minimum would need to be to fund this project so that, I don't lose money publishing a book because, you don't want to lose any money on this like so many Kickstarters do. Mm-hmm. Which is crazy. And then we planned out the stretch goals based on the actual costs it would take and what we thought we could accomplish. So we spread out the stretch goals between the $6,000 funding level and $20,000. We figured that would last the month.
Right.
2 hours. In 2 hours, we had left every stretch goal behind. We were already at 20,000.
Oh, man.
By the end of the first day, we had hit 40,000. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, Wednesday, we're at 48,000. Today, we crossed the $50,000 threshold, and it seems to be finally plateauing.
Right.
The problem is, we have no idea now what to think. Because again, talking to Jim about this, and also having done a lot of research on Kickstarters myself, because, if I'm going to throw this project out, I want to be as forewarned as I can be. You give yourself every chance to succeed. Kickstarters follow a certain funding pattern. Mm-hmm. They generally make 25, 30% of the total money they're going to make in the first 48 hours. Right? It's a big initial surge. Mm-hmm. The last 48 hours, they generally make another 25 to 30% of what they're going to make total. Okay? So it's very front and back loaded. And then in the middle, the other 40 to 50% trickles in, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. So the practical upshot of this is wherever you land 48 hours in, multiply that by 4, and you got a pretty good estimate of where that Kickstarter is going to end.
Awesome. $200,000.
Yeah. But no,
you missed.
But no, it's not. Okay, seriously, it's not.
No, of course not. No, it'll never hit 20,000 either.
No. This part. See, here's like, I don't want to go into all the technical and marketing details.
Yeah. I don't want to hear it either.
Right, I know. But we knew that my Kickstarter was going to be very front loaded. Mm-hmm. I have a very, very strong, very dedicated core fan base that takes action immediately. And I made sure they understood that the success or failure of a Kickstarter is made within the first 48 hours. And asked them, if they were planning to support the project, show up on day one. And they did. All of them. Well, every last one of them did, apparently. And they brought friends. Yes. So the thing is, I do not seriously believe I'm going to have another $40,000 in the last 48 hours of the Kickstarter. I just don't think that's in the market for me. Mm-hmm. But the problem is now we've talked about things like, do we want to add more stretch goals? Do we want to change the project in any way? That creates all sorts of other headaches. And by the time this goes out next week, I will have officially announced we are not adding any stretch goals. We're just going to let it go where it goes at this point. Because the problem is we have absolutely no projections. Okay. Every 2 hours, Jim and I were talking and trying to guess when it was going to plateau and where the whole thing was going to end. And every 2 hours, we came up with a number that we very quickly blasted right past. So
these are terrible problems to have.
Yeah, I see. This is the thing. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
Okay. Even at the back of my mind, okay, because again, accountant, at the back of my mind, there is the part of me that is dealing with the tax implications of this. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm one of those people, like, you know, those disgusting people who like, man, if I didn't have those 3 houses, my taxes would eat me alive. You know, it's like, shut up. But I used to say this to clients all the time when I was doing tax accounting, because they would always get upset about the taxes and they would make a whole bunch of income and then view it as a disaster because they'd have to pay the tax. It's like, this is the best problem to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Having to pay extra income tax means you have extra income and you also have the money to pay the taxes, because the taxes are never going to be more than the money you made. That's not how taxes work. They don't tax you at 150%. You know, that's like, so no, I'm just stunned. Honestly, I had no inkling of this. I did not expect this. And I'm usually on the ball. I usually know what's coming from my fans and stuff like that.
Sure.
So,
well, as you might expect, your number one fan is thrilled. Extremely thrilled.
Tell your mom I said thank you.
Every time I hand her a new update, she's like, oh, that's amazing. She has never once said that to me in my entire life. Damn it.
If it makes you feel any better, for my mom, it was a Tuesday.
Yeah, that makes me feel so much better. Your mom, who has no clue who I am, but my mom knows who you are. Yeah, I feel great. Thanks.
She knows who you are. Actually, my dad knows who you are.
Oh, okay.
I finally burnt him a CD of the GM Word of the Week so that he could listen to it.
Nice.
The project that he practically inspired. At least he inspired my end of it.
Right.
You know, with all his documentaries and science shows and Make Me Watch Connections, and also him getting me into war games and board games and eventually role-playing games, even though he was not a role-playing gamer himself. So it's everything he taught me, and I've been trying for years to get him to listen to the show, but he doesn't know from podcast or technology or anything. So I finally burnt him a CD.
That's cool.
And eventually I'll remember to mail it. For Father's Day. So yeah, but long story short, I'm stunned at this point. I don't have any emotions other than shocked.
Yeah.
I'm and overjoyed, obviously. But more.
You are 845% overfunding. It's like, that's not even a number that makes any sense, but okay.
I know, you know, I laugh about it because there's one other thing that, like I said, I've learned a lot doing this, and I've also learned about a site called KickTrack.
Oh yeah. Everybody anybody knows about KickTrack.
Okay. Wait, are you being facetious now or?
Only a little bit.
Okay. So KickTrack tracks Kickstarters. And it tries to project where it's going to end. Yes.
It's very optimistic.
It is still projecting that I'm going to end at, now it's down to $524,000.
Right.
Okay, because if you look at what KickTrack does, all it really does is assume that whatever trend you've established is going to continue. Yeah. So like on the first day, it just takes whatever your first day is and multiplies it by 30. So the first day it was telling me, oh yeah, you're going to end around 900,000. Like, just shy of $1 million, you're going to land on this book.
No. It was well over $1 million. It was $1.5 million.
Was it?
Oh no, and I knew that was ludicrous. I mean, there's no way $1.5 million people. Yeah. But yeah.
So now gradually it's going down. So now it's projecting that I'm gonna do a cool $500,000 in
mm-hmm.
you know. Wait, it has a note. It says trends are not projections.
Yeah.
So then what are they? Why are they there?
Don't know. But congratulations, sir. You get to actually make your book. That's nice.
Thank you very much.
And I get to edit it, which is also nice.
Oh, come on. That's not that bad.
I don't know. I've edited you before.
Well, yeah, but are you kidding, though? I have a word limit and a page limit to deal with here.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
I can't just babble on about one topic for 5,000 words. That's a tenth of my book.
Now, wait a minute here. You have never babbled on about just one topic. You have your patented rambling introduction, which is never really about the thing that the article is about.
It is always about the thing the article is about, just not in the way you think.
Yeah. Then you have the you do like this expanded 5-paragraph theme where the first paragraph is 7 paragraphs of introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your 6 paragraphs each of the following 3 paragraphs, and then you have another paragraph and a half or 2 about the final paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
You've just basically taken the basic 5-paragraph theme and expanded, which is fine. I'm okay with that.
At least it's hey, you know what? 1,000 people apparently like it. Okay.
I know. I can't argue with it. I mean, it must be something that works, I guess.
And
for at least $50,000 worth.
Then clearly by the end, 500,000. So I'm going to make $500,000 on this book.
Exactly. That'll be great. I can't wait till we can all get a place together.
Right.
On your bill.
Yeah. I'll open my gaming compound.
That's right. Your compound, your company headquarters, your UFO in the desert. There you go. You'll become the Apple of RPGs. Tim wrote in by email. He wants us to know about 2 different RPGs which are related to 2 different previous discussions. One of them is called Oubliette. And apparently what happened, this is related to the discussion about playing without character death and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Oubliette is a character, when they die, has their soul sent to the oubliette, and they can carry on adventuring.
The place of forgetting.
Yes. If they die again, they are simply returned to the oubliette without their body or gear. And corpse retrieval is entirely possible. So it's sort of MMO-like.
Mm-hmm.
And you make the corpse run at the end. So that'll be interesting. It's on our Drive-Thru RPG. The other game is called Shadowside Destiny. You have 3 stats, and your degree of proficiency in those stats determines the limited number of cards you get to use for checks involving those stats. Cards appear to range from 0 to plus or minus 1, plus minus 2, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in there. But you have those, and you only get to spend the cards that you actually have in hand.
Yeah, though I just pulled it up on Drive-Thru RPG. Just a quick correction on the title. It's Enter the Shadow Side - Destiny.
Okay. All right, so both of those are in Drive-Thru RPG. Obviously, Shadowside is all about using cards as your randomizer. And Oubliette is about characters that can't die or don't die. So check those out. That was from Tim. He actually sent me 2 different emails to tell me about 2 different games for 2 different discussions.
Oh.
Yes, very good, Tim. Thank you. You may have a gold star.
I see we've stopped awarding titles.
Yeah, no more titles. We're just awarding gold stars.
Good. That thing just finally petered out.
Yep. It's just the stars now. Gold stars, silver stars, possibly a red star here and there, depending.
Well,
those are
that's ejection from the game, right?
Yeah, I guess they don't have. I've never once been in a classroom that used the star system that didn't have gold stars, silver stars, but no bronze stars. And I don't understand why. So we always ended up with red or green or blue or whatever, some primary color. So I'm just going to go with red.
It can be
Third place is red stars.
It can be difficult to tell gold from bronze in certain formats like foil stickers.
Maybe, but whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea.
I wonder what the origin of those three metals is.
I wish somebody would do a podcast that talks about the origins of words and things. And
I'm actually writing it on the list right now. Okay.
Okay.
Just so you know, I didn't just say it out loud and leave it.
I mean, because we've done platinum and we've done orichalcum. All right. Okay. Good. Thank you, Morgan.
Technically, we've already done gold and silver because we did electrum.
Yes. True.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah. Morgan emailed in as well. He thinks he's found the perfect game for me. And that it is particularly relevant to my current batch of interests. It's called Quill, and it involves writing letters to various people in various situations with particular requirements, which are then scored paragraph by paragraph, along with a die roll to determine the overall reception of the letter and whether or not you get what you want out of it.
Do you have to actually write the letter?
You do actually have to write the letter. It is a solo RPG, but can be played with more than one person. It's designed solo, it sounds like, and then more than one person can play it. And it's kind of interesting because each person you're writing a letter to not only has different turns of phrase and whatnot that please them, they have different qualities and stuff that make them adjust how pleased they are with things. And you will have like a little modifier in each of those categories of qualities. And you can apply that to your die roll and adjust things up or down accordingly. So it sounds interesting. I mean, it is, I think, geared mostly to solo play. And if you were to play it with more than one person, you would essentially be playing like four-hand solo. But, that's no big deal.
So this is basically taking the old sad person who has no friends and therefore just writes like birthday cards to himself.
Mm-hmm.
And calling it a role-playing game so that it makes it okay.
Okay, that is certainly one assessment of it.
It is if you are interested, because I just pulled this up too. It is pay what you want.
It is pay what you want. That is true.
I'm curious enough that I actually might want to pay a little bit for it and get it.
I did, and I have it.
Do you?
Yes, and I have read through it. It's like 9 pages. It's interesting, and I will give it a shot at some point. But Morgan also suggested that I might want to live stream it, and at first I wasn't sure he was entirely serious about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how you would live stream writing a letter other than just point the camera at the page.
Right.
I don't know. So it would take some thought to actually live stream it. But I just want to assure Morgan that it's okay. You're fine. You can relax.
Speaking of,
yes,
just apropos of nothing, except that the guy is currently working on a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever played How to Host a Dungeon?
I have not, nor have I played any of the How to Host a Murders or anything like that.
No, How to Host a Dungeon is nothing like How to Host a Murder.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. So no, I have not played How to Host a Dungeon because clearly I didn't know it wasn't like How to Host a Murder.
It is by Tony Dowler, who is best known for all his he does all the classical dungeon maps about that all look with he does all the classic cross hatching. Cross hatching is this thing.
Right. He likes cross hatches.
Yeah. Yeah, like as soon as you see his style, you'll know who I'm talking about. But he developed this game called How to Host a Dungeon, and you play it on tracing paper. And you are drawing. Remember the old, sometimes in the old dungeon adventures in D&D, they used to do side views of the dungeon, like the dungeon in profile kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you are gradually building up that dungeon through a combination of die rolls and moving things around over various eras of play. So what'll happen, like in the primordial era, you'll establish like there's an underground river and you'll draw a river just cutting the map in half, and a vein of gold and an ancient cave or something like that. Then you take a piece of graph paper or tracing paper, place it over that first drawing, and now it's like the era of monsters. And so you'll roll and it'll say, okay, these monsters appear, and wherever you drop the die on the page, that's where it happens. So you'll draw like a little monster layer there. And then you'll hit the age of civilization, and depending on the die rolls, there will be a civilization like dwarves or whatever. So you start a new piece of graph or tracing paper, and each turn the dwarves will do something, like they'll dig another tunnel, or they'll follow a vein or whatever, or they'll reproduce and spread. And if they find, like, they'll encounter stuff from the primordial era, and then you like bring it up onto the current tracing paper. So like they might dig into the primordial monsters layer, and then, you know, cities and stuff will grow on the surface. And by the end, you have this really cool game/story that played out, but you also have a neat side view of what is actually sort of a usable dungeon map.
Huh.
It is true.
That sounds fairly interesting.
It's a huge amount of fun. I love it. I bought it years ago. And honestly, now I'm considering that would be a pretty easy one to live stream. I might actually live stream how to host a dungeon at some point. Yeah, I'm going to wait. And whatever time you decide to do it, I'm going to like be the competing live stream.
That's great. Thank you. You're very helpful. Yeah. I appreciate it. You've always been my favorite supporter. No, that's cool. So how to host a dungeon?
I gave you a link for the show notes.
Excellent. You're such a good person to me.
Man, I hope you're in a better mood next week. This is really bringing me down.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. So that's what I'm bringing to the No, it's not. I got one more.
You got one more, sir.
I got one more. Kelsey has emailed the show, or us, or otherwise known as me. I'm gonna bury the question at the bottom here so I can do the preamble, which has been arranged a little differently here. Given that in episode 37 you clarify in no uncertain terms that starting a role-playing blog is by no means the way to get filthy, stinking rich, I'll be avoiding that method. Do you have any advice for someone looking to get into the RPG development business? As a 20-something looking for a career, I'd love to make a job out of one of my favorite hobbies. Thanks for any and all advice you can give. You're not going to like my advice, because my advice is 2 steps. Get yourself out there where people can see you, and then be lucky.
Yeah.
That's really, really all I can tell you about that process, because that's how I got to be an editor for FFG, and then for Modifius, and then for some other little projects as well. Mm-hmm. Get out there, get yourself in front of people where they can see you, and then be lucky. That's really it. There are other more traditional ways, which I'm sure you can figure out on your own. For example, just paying attention to particular companies you would like to work for, paying attention to their websites and job announcements and that sort of stuff, and applying for, those opportunities that come up can do that. But honestly, I didn't do that. I didn't even consider doing that, really. I was just approached one day by somebody who was already working at FFG, working on the Star Wars stuff over there for them, designing the system and all that kind of stuff. Jay Little, if you know him. And he just approached me one day and said, "Hey, would you like to be an editor for Star Wars?" And I went, gosh, let me think about that. Yes. And I mean, it's hard to say it's a career. It's more like, I have a toe in the pool and it's all freelance and whatnot. But That's how I got in. I eventually got to write some stuff and all that kind of thing. That's my story. What's your advice there, Mr. Angry Sir?
See, I hesitate to give any advice yet because it'll be a couple of years before I know whether my method has worked.
Well, that's not true.
I have, one actual credit. I have worked on one project.
One is more than none.
Right. And
it's a foot in the door.
Yeah. And honestly, it happened the same way you did. I had been writing my blog for several years at that point. I was out there, and I was contacted by game designer Dave Noonan, because he and Steve Schubert and Rich Baker were starting their own company and working on their flagship product. And Dave Noonan happened to be a reader of my blog. He just knew of me because I got lucky. He happened to find me on the internet, and there I was. So, after that, though, I decided to go a different route. I decided to go I'm going to start my own company and do this myself route. Okay, which is certainly a way to go.
Yeah, it's equally as valid as any other.
Right. But the thing is, I don't know whether it will have worked yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So far at this point, obviously this week I'm willing to say first major hurdle accomplished. Right. Because I have proven I can make money actually publishing something. Though, of course, in 2 weeks I could have a lot of egg on my face if I didn't actually publish the book, not 2 weeks. What is it? Because we're delivering in December. But anyway, I'm distracted. Sorry. The point is, I hesitate to give any advice because I don't know whether my method is successful yet, but I'll say a couple of things. One, very frequently, the folks at various game companies, especially Wizards of the Coast, will respond to the question, hey, how do I get involved in role-playing games? How do I get involved in design? And their answer is always the same. There's no one way to do it. Everybody who is at this company got here by a different method, which is not remarkably helpful. Yeah, but
surprisingly,
but that's the thing. Ultimately, what it comes down to is if you want to do something as a career, whatever method you're going to use, you're going to spend a lot of time doing a lot of hard work for very little reward before it pays off.
That's right.
Okay. No matter what the career is, you start in the mailroom. Okay. So, I mean, that's the thing it's like you said, you became an editor, you got lucky. They asked you if you wanted to be an editor, and eventually you got to write some stuff.
Yep.
So, so be prepared to start at the bottom. And in fact, I know a lot of people who got into video game design actually started by doing things like even QA testing, where you basically just play the same section of a new video game 50,000 times and log every bug that happens. Yep. Okay, which it sounds fun. Oh, I'm going to QA test video games until you actually do it,
It's not. I know a lot of it is I'm going to run into this wall for the next 4 hours straight until it breaks. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Here's 40 instructions to replicate this bug. Can see if you can break it again the same way. But yeah, it's and that's it though. Just expect that whatever you're going to do, if you want it to be a career, you're going to start at the bottom and you're going to work at it.
Like we said with the blog thing, you're not going to make $1 million at it right off the bat. In fact, it's fairly likely you'll make, the bare minimum there is for quite some time. I can tell you on average, beginning editing, for example, is in the range of a penny or so a word. And you're going to think, a penny a word, that's terrible. Well, yeah, but sometimes you get lucky and you get to edit an entire book. Right, you get
to edit a lot of words.
Yeah, all those pennies work out. But that is as a ballpark figure, that is a rough estimate of what you can expect from the editing side of things. But like I say, you're not going to get rich right off the bat. It's unlikely that you will be full-time staff right off the bat. I'm certainly just a freelancer, when somebody wants something, they get a hold of me, and I say yes or no, depending on what my commitments are about it.
And, and honestly, a lot of companies are now, a lot of role-playing game companies rely more on freelancers and contractors than they do on in-house staff.
Yeah.
So that's if you're looking for stability, guaranteed work, and a solid income, you're going into the wrong career.
Yes, definitely the wrong career. Yeah. Frankly, any of the creative careers, the genuine, where you're creating things out of whole cloth and whatnot, stability is not the first thing you think of.
Well, ultimately, I'll say this, and I know this is going to upset some people, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's the truth. Okay? If there is a job out there that is a job that a lot of people would love to do, that seems like it's a dream job, there's something wrong with that job.
Yeah.
Okay? Because a lot of people want to do it. And that's the problem. You're competing with a lot of people who are all willing to do it for less pay because it's their dream job. Okay? And like video game design, that's another area where the job conditions in video game design are absolutely terrible. Okay? And you hear the stories about it time and time again. The culture behind video game design, all that stuff, it's terrible. Because the market is saturated. Everybody wants to do it. So companies can find people who are willing to put up with, 80 to 100 hour work weeks during crunch time and sleeping at the office because everybody wants to do it. It's their dream job. So be aware of that too. This is, if you're looking for any of the usual things that you want out of a career because you're going to raise a family and whatever, you want to find something else.
And I'm going to throw one other thing out there, which will, in fact, cause people to show up at my front door with burning pitchforks. You're starting out. You're interested in something. You're going to have to do a lot of work for that thing to happen. Don't be afraid to do it for free.
Nope.
If it's the difference between you getting your work out there where people can see it and remaining unheard of, don't be afraid to do something for free for exposure.
Because, and here's the deal with that. While everybody else is screaming at us for daring to say that, you'll be the one who's actually building a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the people you'll be competing with are people who have nothing to show for their work. I think we talked about the portfolio thing last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we might.
Every artist has to build a portfolio.
Yep.
So
the work I did to get out in front of the person who saw me and said, "Hey, come do this for us for money." The work I did up to that point was a little over a year of absolutely free work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it took to get out there and get noticed and be seen, and then somebody to recognize, that I fit a particular role they were looking for. Not that I had better talent or anything like that, but that I had the basic required skills to take on that role and do it. I did all that for free, for nothing.
And I will say again for myself, for the first 7 years of the 10 years that I've been running my website, I was doing it for free while maintaining a 40 to 70 hour full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And after that, like 6 years in, that's when I got my first offer of work that was actually paid work, which was Noonan. And then after that, I was able to monetize my blog, and now I'm publishing a book. That's what it takes.
Don't be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. It's a necessary part of the process. If you're one of those people who will not do anything unless you are being paid for it, you're actually putting yourself at a disadvantage, I think.
Nope, I agree.
So there you go. That's the advice. It's hard work and be lucky.
Yeah.
All right. You brought some stuff in here to this little feedback section. And I'm not sure what to think of it, so I'm going to let you lead it off, and then we'll see what happens.
Okay. So Matthew left a comment on episode 38 where we were discussing the number of young players who seem to be nostalgic for things that they had not been born for.
Right.
And he mentioned that one of the reasons he's nostalgic for old D&D adventures is because of Nodwick. Which
explain. So
Nodwick is a comic, an absolutely brilliant D&D comic by Aaron Williams.
Agreed.
And during the print run of Dungeon Magazine, he was doing short comics that parodied many of the iconic old adventures for first and second edition. And Matthew says that's what caused him to seek them out. And the only reason I even thought this was worth responding to is because I wanted to add some Nodwick love. So I'm going to suggest to Matthew and everybody else out there, go find the 6-volume Nodwick. I guess what would you call it? Like it's a
collected works.
Mm-hmm.
The collected Nodwicks or whatever.
Yeah, Nodwick Chronicles. That's what they are.
Okay.
There's a whole series of them. There's 6 of them in total, and they are a complete, brilliant story that I absolutely love. Aaron Williams is a genius, and he even did me the pleasure of signing my copy of #1 a couple of years ago when I finally met him.
Oh.
And we chat on Twitter a lot. We make jokes back and forth.
Nice.
Which is, you know what? I'm going to say this, because I've been sort of down on social media the last couple of days for a variety of reasons. One of the actual nice things about it is discovering that you can chat with people who did stuff that you were like in awe of, and discovering that they're just people like you, like comic artists and game designers and whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Maybe I won't trash and burn Twitter today.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Okay, that's good.
Anyway.
So how big a deal do you think that is? Somebody hears a story from one of the old grognards or whatever, and then they have to go play that to see if that's true or as fun as they said it was, or
well,
you think that drives anything?
I don't know. Well, clearly it drove one person.
Yes.
So I hesitate to say it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
No, I suppose that this point has actually been raised to me a few times now, because I sort of harped on the nostalgia for things you couldn't be nostalgic for in a couple of different channels. And a lot of people brought that up to me. They said, we hear so many, old gamers have fond memories of all of this stuff. And it makes people curious about it. When you hear a whole bunch of people talk about how amazing, say, like Ravenloft or Against the Giants or Temple of Elemental Evil, that was one of my favorites, how amazing that old stuff was. Yeah, I guess I can understand why you want to seek it out. Sort of the same way that, you have, when older people talk about how great the original Star Wars trilogy was,
Older people?
Yeah. Before,
what do you mean?
Before the new Star Wars came out and ruined everything. And then the other new Star Wars came out and ruined everything.
Oh, that one.
Yes, I'm referring to everything that wasn't 4, 5, and 6 as ruining it, okay?
Okay.
Anyway.
That's fine.
But yeah, no, I'm sure a certain amount of that drives people to be curious. But the cynical and sad part of me that wants to grumble about it being so much better when sort of wonders why people feel unsatisfied with what currently exists enough that they have to go back and seek out and possibly even remake the old stuff.
See, now here's the question I was going to throw at you and then almost decided not to until you said that.
Yeah.
They do this with movies quite a lot lately. I mean, you can look at like Robocop, the original, versus Robocop, the most recent one, whatever, and a few other movies in a similar vein and whatnot. If the original was so good, and I think we're in agreement here that the original Robocop was a really fun, good film, you know?
Yeah. It was actually, the original Robocop was actually a very biting deconstruction. It was a very smart film for being such a dumb film.
Right.
But yeah.
And keep in mind, we're not saying good in terms of, oh, this was Oscar-worthy material. No, we're saying a film was fun to watch.
Yes.
You know, and it had no major problems that we cared about, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And then when you took that film studies class later on, it did make you think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But at the same time, do you think that the new Robocop and other films like it, which are just remakes of older films and whatnot, do you think the new Robocop really needs to be there for the new generation because they heard how good the original Robocop was and for some reason didn't go track it down and watch it themselves?
It's sort of funny that you bring up Robocop of all things.
Well, of course it is.
Well, no, because that's like, if you were asking me about some other remake, then I would sort of have a different answer. Okay. But the new Robocop, while I was not particularly happy with it and found it overly bland, it did deal with completely different themes than the original. And at least it was clear that somebody who wrote that script had a concept of what dealing with themes meant. Okay, because it was dealing with themes of, you know, humanity, free will, and stuff like that, whereas the original Robocop was more of a social satire. But but that aside, I mean, the problem is we live in a day and age where you can actually go and see all of this old stuff. If you want to go see the original Robocop, you can. There's nothing stopping you. I'm sure it's on 1,000 different streaming services. Right? Or you can rent it on Amazon or buy the DVD or whatever, or the Blu-ray or whatever the kids watch now. So yeah, I guess it doesn't need to be made, which sort of raises, this is the question that I wonder about, because I'm now not answering yours and just blasting past it.
Right. But I'm going to come back to mine. So go ahead.
Isn't it kind of stupid to do that? Because here's the deal. Okay, so let's say I decide I'm going to remake something that absolutely everybody loved and thought was a classic comedy, like Back to the Future.
Right.
Let's stay away from Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
Okay?
We'll stay away from that.
So the people who are going to go see that movie are the people who have fond memories of Ghostbusters. Because
or Back to the Future.
I'm sorry, Back to the Future, because we're not talking about Ghostbusters, who have fond memories of Back to the Future, and they're going to bring their kids, because that's really what you're hoping for, is introducing the new generation, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
If you cannot make a movie that is better than the original, what you are going to have is a whole group of people who come out of that movie. First of all, assuming the previews don't reveal that the movie is worse than the original. What you're going to have is a whole bunch of people who are walking out of that movie necessarily comparing your movie to the other one. Like, if you make a totally original movie, the one thing you can be sure of is nobody is going to be comparing it to another version of it, right? It'll stand or fail on its own merits. And then to find a movie that a lot of people loved so much that here we are, oh my God, it's 1985, so that's 30 years later on Back to the Future. And you're thinking of remaking it because it is so well known and so well loved and so remembered. So now you're going to remake this movie that absolutely everybody is going to compare to an original movie that is that timeless and enduring. Aren't you setting yourself up to failure no matter what you do?
It seems like you might be. I could be wrong. It's happened once or twice. But I want to give you the other half of my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead.
I'm going to give you the other half of my question now, okay? Suppose you ran and played and enjoyed the original Ravenloft.
Right.
Does there need to be a remake of that?
Well, yeah, because
so the new generations, because yeah, okay.
It's basically doing an HD remix for a different console.
Right.
I mean,
so if you played and enjoyed the original Dark Souls,
yeah.
Do you need Dark Souls remastered?
I hate you. Well, it's funny you bring up Dark Souls, because if you brought up anything else, I have a different answer. But Robocop, I mean, Dark Souls dealt with different... Never mind.
Yes.
No,
all right.
I get exactly what you're saying. I really do. Okay, I think with role-playing game adventures, though, there is an argument to be made for the fact that updating it for the current system does make it more approachable. Because what I don't have to do then is go learn a whole other rule set. And going back to first or second edition is a very different rule set.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't understand why they would republish and modify something that was done for third edition, but that's just me.
Yeah. And I'm not going to suggest in any way, shape, or form that you could have had a very similar experience to a reprint if you had simply just published updated stats.
Well, yeah, you could, but see, here's the problem. The original Ravenloft managed to do all of the good meat parts of Curse of Strahd in like 20 pages.
Right.
Even allowing for the fact that stat blocks are like 40 times the size that they used to be now. You still could not sell a 50-page hardback of Ravenloft. Of a $50 200-page is what I meant to say. Reprint of Ravenloft. Unless you add a whole bunch of extra unnecessary content that the smart people all cut out just to get to the good bits. Which I have a number of people who ran Curse of Strahd, which I still think is one of their better modules, have now reported to me parts of it that they just absolutely cut out because they are so unrelated to the main game.
All right. Well, that's all I wanted to ask about that one. So you have yet another one in here. What is going on?
Yeah.
How did you get 2 pieces of feedback in on your own?
Now that's hurtful. I do work at this.
I'm sorry.
Actually, it's just a short.
Getting better.
It's just a short thing. Jan is a frequent commenter of ours.
Yes.
And I just wanted to take away. He left another comment on episode 38. But that's not really why I wanted to bring it in. Although he did ask an interest. I guess. Okay. So we'll do the question quick.
Sure.
He wanted us to talk about Dice Mojo. The superstitions that gamers have about dice and their place in RPG culture. Superstitions like rolling out the ones on your dice or not touching someone else's dice or why every gamer has to have so many dice and what dice companies. I guess he just wants us to talk about dice. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I pulled this in mainly because I just wanted an opportunity to thank him because the day I launched my Kickstarter at 6 a.m. while I was puttering around waiting for 0 hour, I received a notification from Steam that he had gifted me Darkest Dungeon, which is a game I have been looking at for some time. So it's a dungeon crawler, turn-based dungeon crawler type role-playing game, in which your heroes basically suffer all of the psychological and physical traumas of what would actually happen to adventurers, is basically the pitch for it. Now, I'm having trouble describing it because that morning turned into chaos even before the Kickstarter went live, and I only ended up playing about 5 minutes of it.
I think that's okay, because I think most people will be familiar with Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, it's been out there for a while.
Yeah.
I don't play many games on PC, is the thing.
Yeah, that's all right.
I like to sit on the couch, play with a controller in a console.
I bought Ni no Kuni 2, which is entirely a different discussion. We'll have a later date, but I bought it. Yeah, okay, so this dice thing.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Okay, first off, everybody knows dice are ruled entirely by luck. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows that anything you can do that might potentially influence that luck in a positive manner for you is fair game to do.
Right.
I mean, it's just those are the rules. That's how this works. There is no evidence to the contrary. So you roll the 20s out. Not so much. I mean, you don't want to roll the 20s out. You want to not roll the 20s out.
Depends on the system.
Well, it does depend on the system.
There do exist some roll low systems still, some twisted.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Some weird hybrid mutant systems. You want to roll the ones out, though. So the object there is to roll all the ones pregame and none of the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is totally doable. You can totally do that. That works every single time. And I don't know that I've ever experienced what I'm going to call spite rolls, where you roll when someone else rolls just to say, "See, I could have done better than you." I don't know that I've ever experienced spite rolls. I think I would probably confiscate somebody's die if I were to experience that. But then you get into the problem of not touching other people's dice because you'll goof their luck up.
Right.
And so, bad things can happen with dice, okay? Bad, inexplicable things can happen with dice that require you sometimes to quarantine a particular die or set of dice off in a corner somewhere by themselves, or perhaps you throw them in the freezer and then smash them with a hammer later. Perhaps you subject them to a trial by fire. Perhaps, any number of things could potentially happen to poorly behaving dice. So you need backup sets.
Of course.
You need as many backup sets as you think you will have dice that need to be quarantined, at least.
Right.
Okay? One of my particular favorites was the guy who would roll the die and then be displeased with the number it had shown, and then throw that die across the room to be left there forever. And then pull out another die and start rolling again until it too misbehaved. And then joined the other die, and just, a constant succession of this. So that's the dice thing. You have to, in any small amount of influence you can bring to bear on the luck of the die is totally acceptable. Hackmaster, for example, has the dice rub page with the signatures. Comes with 2 signatures of the creators of the game, and then as you collect more signatures, the luck imparted to the die as you rub it across this space in the first book, in a very specific way, I might add. The luck just increases. The flow of luck into the die increases. And that's important. That's what you need to do if you ever hope to roll well. And I don't care what anybody will tell you about, all sides being equally probable of coming up, and all these little calculations of probability and bell curves and all. It's all luck. It's all how you influence the luck. And if you don't do it right, you can have a bad game.
Now, I have a slightly different take on things, but I get to the same place. See, here's the deal. I understand that, we have things like science and geometry and math and all of these things, and they have taught us very wonderful things about the world. And I don't discount any of that. But there are also many things on heaven and earth that I have seen that defy this stuff. Okay? So I have seen cursed players who, and he knows who he is if he's listening, because he was at my table for some 15 years, who was absolutely banned from touching anybody's dice. We would not lend him any sets if he forgot his dice, because his luck was so abysmally terrible that it would infect any dice he touched forever. Beyond that, if your dice sat too close to his at the table, it would the infection would spread from his dice to others. He was legitimately cursed. I don't know how, I don't know why, nobody does, but it was also undeniable. And I have had people explain to me, and I have a die called the Player Killer. Okay. This is a die that I have had since high school. It was given to me by my best friend. It was a D20. This die has rolled more critical hits than any 10 other dice I have ever owned. to the point where several different groups all banned me from using it at various points. Okay, that's the extent to which this was noticeable. That I was literally banned by different groups who did not know the story of the player killer or that it was even called that. They just knew that die kept taking their characters out. And so it was banned multiple times. I still have it enshrined somewhere, but I no longer play with it, just in the interest of fair play. Okay. Now, people have told me that this stuff is confirmation bias or you're just imagining it or whatever. And okay, fine. I know those are things and we all fall into these rational mental traps. But what if it's not? What if there really is stuff that we don't know about? Is it really worth the risk? I mean, when you think about it, like if you can increase if there's a slim chance that treating your dice right will increase the odds of every die roll you make at the table, why would you not do that? Sure, it might not have any effect. The universe might be boring and dull and deterministic, and there might be no such thing as free will. Or it might not be. It might be a wonderful, magical universe where the tiniest thing you do could change the outcome in ways you can't even possibly imagine. So why take the chance? Of course, you set your dice up so that they are always showing the highest number whenever they are not in use. That's how they learn. That's how they know what they're supposed to display as they roll. Oh yes, I'm supposed to land on 20. This is how I always sit. This is the most comfortable place for me. And of course, when you notice a luck sink at your table, a black hole of fortune, you keep all the dice away from them. These are just obvious, natural things, you know?
Obvious and natural. That is the key.
Yeah. So that's my take. I'm not as convinced of it as you. I have my doubts. But I don't think my skepticism is worth the risk. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Plus, I've seen things, man.
Yeah.
I've seen things.
In terms of dice bags, towers, trays you have or dislike, I'm sorry, the only thing I can tell you is the only dice bag that's any good at all is a Royal Crown bag. Mm-hmm. Everything else is bad.
I'm sorry. No. I have a set of custom-made wide string drawstring wide mouth bags made by. I don't even know if she still exists. I mean, I'm pretty sure she's still a person. I just have fallen out with her. But I bought numerous books. I think her name was Geeky Lindsay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and her dice bags are absolutely fantastic. And I still have
they
numerous
are.
ones of them.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't actually own a Crown Royal bag myself. I don't. I have a nice little leather bag, which I don't know where I found it, but it's nice and leathery. And I have one that's specifically for Star Wars dice and has the Empire logo on the outside, which I got from FFG. And I've got, believe it or not, I've got a silver bag, a silver drawstring bag. It's like shiny, silvery kind of stuff. You know, it's not just merely silver colored; it's shiny, silvery. That contained at one point a wassail mix for home wassailing.
For home wassailing?
Yes.
As in caroling?
For the basically. It was a drink to keep you warm.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
The other type of wassailing.
Yes, there you go. You are now with it. So those are my dice bags, and then I have numerous containers which contain other dice that are not currently in rotation. They're fishing tackle boxes, so whatever. Tackle trays, actually, but.
And by the way,
I don't have a tower.
Sorry, if you show up at my table with a dice tower, I'm going to take a hammer to it.
Yeah, you're going to be in trouble. Nobody needs a tower.
Just roll your freaking dice. And if you need a tray, by the way, if you need a tray to keep your dice under control, learn how to roll dice. I need the tray, otherwise my dice go all over the place. Then you know what? You can't play. Okay, you can't play until you learn how to use your tools. You just go in the corner and you practice rolling dice under control.
There's no need to have them bouncing across the table.
And then, of course, once you allow the tray, then people bring the cup.
Right.
The tray and the cup go hand in hand. They're a matching set. You got to allow that.
Yes. And then all of a sudden you're playing Liar's Dice and not D&D at all. So,
yeah.
For shame on you. For shame. The man who had no time to participate in the reading group has now started a fourth book. Okay, that's great.
Well, the problem with the reading group is that you have unreasonable rules about having to finish things.
Oh, like actually having to finish things.
Yeah. I find that unreasonable.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Well, unlike our first book in the reading group, this was a much more pleasurable book to read, much more fun and interesting and well written, I have to say, just in general. The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. I will give you the end up front. I like it.
Okay.
So there you go. And I don't know who Kareem is, but he's very lucky to have this book dedicated to him.
Wasn't he a basketball player?
Yes, there were several. I don't know that that's the same one, though. Okay.
It could be.
I don't know. It could be. It's possible. It could also equally not be. So, The Golem and the Genie is, to summarize it in the shortest possible way, is about a golem named Chava who finds herself created for a man who almost immediately dies upon activating her, makes her way to turn of the last century New York, and tries to find her place there. Meanwhile, there is a genie named Ahmad, who finds himself captured and imprisoned inside the traditional genie's bottle, but for various reasons is never taken out of the bottle until about 1,000 years after his capture, when he too finds himself in turn-of-the-century New York and has to make his way there as well. Eventually, the two meet. Things happen in a variety of ways, and then they both find themselves at a conclusion that I have to say is equally unacceptable for both of them, but is the best they can do under the circumstances.
Okay.
All right. Now, that's the rough outline of the book.
Mm-hmm.
The more important parts of this are as follows. The Golem is, of course... and excuse me. I know I say Golem. Mm-hmm. And I know we had a whole episode of GM Word of the Week where I pronounced it Golem just to make people happy, but I'm much more comfortable saying Golem.
Sir, I have long given up correcting your pronunciation.
Yeah, I know.
I long ago gave up correcting your pronunciation.
I know.
It's a losing battle.
Yes, it is. It's ingrained habits. That's all there is to it. Okay, so what happens is this golem is, of course, a creature essentially of what we will loosely call Jewish mythology. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the genie, of course, is a creature of what we will loosely call Arabian mythology.
Okay.
All right? Or if you insist, Syrian mythology in this book.
Right.
But they are both things that are theoretically do not exist. But for the purposes of this story and the way it works, are thought to exist or treated as if they do exist, while maintaining everything else about New York City at the turn of the last century exactly as it actually was.
Did you seriously just explain the genre convention of magical reality?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You are very thorough, sir. Kudos.
Right. But I pointed out because you might look at the title and you might think, oh, this is some sort of fantasy, swords and sorcery kind of thing set in modern day or whatever. And it's not that.
Fair enough. Okay.
It's not that. It's treated. The only two exceptional things really are the golem and the genie themselves. Everything else is as you would have expected it to have been. There's a man named Rotfeld who is the golem's master. And the way he has acquired the golem is to go to a man and pay him a great sum of money, a man named Shalman, who is something of a wizard. And he's steeped in all kinds of Kabbalistic lore and all kinds of things like that. And persuaded him to create a golem to be his wife, to be Rotfeld's wife. And he has a very particular set of qualities he likes and wants in this golem. So after paying a considerable amount of money and waiting a considerable amount of time, Shalman eventually produces the golem as ordered. Rotfeld immediately thereafter boards a steamer headed to New York from Poland, is where this all starts, really. And finds himself becoming very ill along the way, to the point where he is very near death's door when he stumbles down to the hold of the freighter and actually activates his golem, which he was not planning to do until they actually reach New York. He immediately dies pretty much as soon as she wakes up. He immediately dies, leaving her masterless, which presents a unique problem for the golem, in that normally she is tuned in very tightly to her master's thoughts and feelings, so as to anticipate and provide for his needs and protection. But without a master, she finds herself in a situation where she can kind of now tune into absolutely everybody around her's thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
Which gets her in a large amount of trouble upon arriving to New York. There's some byplay in there about getting off the ship too early and all that kind of stuff. I'm smoothing that over. When she finally arrives in New York, she finds herself in a situation where she runs across a little boy who is basically starving. And she sees a man who has a piece of, some food or whatever. And she takes the food away from the man and gives it to the boy, because that's what the boy wants. He's starving so badly that he's just sort of longing for a piece of food. So she solves the problem by giving this boy bread. Immediately, this gets her in trouble. A large crowd gathers around her, and she starts in the emotional maelstrom of this crowd and whatnot. She begins to lose control of herself, turning into what golems really are supposed to be, which is creatures of extreme violence and a desire to protect. Okay?
Okay.
So she's losing control of herself. She's on the verge of becoming so violent that she will enter a sort of a rampage and be totally uncontrollable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right? Because she has no master, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there are words. There's words that activate her, and there's words that destroy her. Okay? But nobody knows what they are now, because her master's dead. And she has them on a piece of paper in a locket around her neck, which she keeps with her most of the time. But nobody, of course, knows any of that. Most of them don't even realize she's a golem yet. She is on the verge of that rampage when she is found by a rabbi who has recognized her for what she is, because he himself has done quite a bit of studying of the ancient, Jewish mysticism and all that kind of stuff. So he has recognized the signs of her for what she is, and he intervenes at practically the last moment to prevent the whole scene from going bad.
Mm-hmm.
He takes her in. He's a very old rabbi. He takes her in. He begins to help her train herself to control her emotions, to control how much she's feeling from other people, and that kind of stuff. She eventually ends up working in a bakery, just for something to do during the day, because she needs no sleep or food, really. And at night, she does a little light seamstress work and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of where we get her up to in like the first act.
Okay.
Right. Meanwhile, the genie has been entrapped in his bottle for, like I say, 1,000 years or so. And one day that bottle is brought into the shop of a Syrian tinsmith in New York. And as he is repairing the bottle, because it has been damaged to some extent, as he's repairing the bottle, he releases the genie. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, unlike most typical genies, this is not a wish-granting kind of genie. All right? But he has been enslaved. He has an iron bracelet that constrains him to human form and takes away quite a fair bit of his supernatural abilities. But he discovers that he can work the tin and repair things and all that kind of stuff. And so Arbeli, who is the tinsmith, keeps him around, gives him a place to live and a place to work. And he sets about repairing things like, kettles and pans and that kind of stuff. And so the genie finds a temporary place he can be, much as the golem did. And that's really the theme of the entire novel, is these extreme outsiders, because they are neither human nor are they part of the predominant culture in America at the time. Neither are they particularly at home being the things that they are. All right? The genie is not comfortable being stuck in this human form. The golem doesn't even understand being human at this point, not comfortable interacting with them or anything like that. And it's about outsiders. But the interesting thing is that it's about outsiders in communities that are outside of the community, the main community itself. So you have the genie and Arbeli, which are, in what they call Little Syria in New York City. And you have the golem in the Jewish quarter of New York City, whatever that was called. I don't remember exactly, but and they're all trying to find a place at the turn of the century when there are so many immigrants coming in and so many people who don't have a place to be, don't understand what their place is in the new place that they are in or anything like that. But these guys are the most outside. Mm. And the entire novel is about them dealing with that and trying to fit in as best they can, and how difficult that actually is for people who are not of the culture they find themselves in.
Right.
So that's the main theme of the book. All right.
Okay.
Eventually, as the story goes on, and I'm not going to relate the whole thing. It's enough to have the setup and then talk about various other parts. They each find their own level of discontent and begin doing what you might call foolish things because of it.
Okay.
And this winds up with the golem doing great bodily harm to the supposed boyfriend of one of the people she has become acquainted with, and the genie preventing her from outright killing them. They do eventually meet up, although they spend about, I would say, half the book not knowing each other exists yet. All right, the genie and the golem. But anyway, he prevents her from totally killing this guy, but that sets up a whole bunch of problems that eventually wind up with them not being able to live even slightly as normally as they were before. Meanwhile, across the ocean comes Shalman. Shalman, it turns out, has been looking for the secret to eternal life for most of his life, and gets a dream one night that suggests he might need to go to New York. So he goes to New York, he casts some spells and whatnot, and he discovers that, somewhere in the city of New York is the secret to his eternal life. And he begins tracking this down. Well, eventually he comes across the golem he created. And while masquerading as a helpful, nice person, which he is most definitely not, keeps tabs on her, but discovers that she herself is not the secret to eternal life. Right. It's something else in the city. So he starts tracking that down. Guess what? It turns out to be the genie.
Yeah, I saw that one coming.
Okay. So he begins a campaign of trying to figure out how to get what he wants out of the genie, the golem, and it turns out the rabbi that took in the golem and a bunch of other people he's manipulated and all this kind of stuff. And that's all coming to a head. At the same time, all the other stuff is coming to a head. He's a particular outsider in that he doesn't even speak English to start with. So, Eventually, the rabbi passes away, and the golem is really left to her own devices, and she screws that up with the attack on the boyfriend of her acquaintance. So she decides she's going to marry the rabbi's nephew, who has had sort of a soft spot for her, because she's a strikingly handsome woman, believe it or not. And
well, she was created to be someone's mail order bride, so.
Yes, essentially, you're correct. And so, although she had turned him down previously, she shows up at his front porch and asks him to marry her, thinking that by being married to him, he will help keep her under control. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This turns out to be a bad idea, of course, because now she has to fake all kinds of things, like sleeping beside him through the night and, preparing meals and all this other stuff. And it's just a bad situation for her.
Right, like humans do.
Yeah. She has, in essence, enslaved herself to an idea that she needs somebody else to keep her under control. And this leads to bad things. This is, of course, a parallel to the genie's own enslavement with the whole bottle and the iron wristband and all that kind of stuff that has kept him imprisoned for 1,000 years. And, of course, they have very different philosophies about what it means to be free and what it's, what enslavement looks like and how life is supposed to be lived in their current positions and states. All right. So that's another theme in the book. Eventually what we discover, and this will be spoilery, so you're probably going to want to skip ahead about 5 or 10 minutes. Eventually what turns out to be the case is that Shulman is actually a reincarnation, one of several, of the original wizard who imprisoned the genie. So not only is he tied to the genie with the imprisonment, he's also tied to the golem because he created her.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And many years ago, the genie was misbehaving quite badly, which we find out throughout the course of the book, and got himself captured by being foolish and not paying enough attention to what was going on around him. And in the process, he was forced to kill someone who he had taken as his lover. Okay? Now, the person who did the imprisonment and the killing and forcing him to kill and all this other stuff is the Shulman character from way back. And he's had a number of incarnations throughout the years, and all of them have been focused on this idea of discovering the secret of eternal life. So he has more or less been enslaved to this idea throughout the entirety of his life and lives. Okay? So this is also about the different kinds of enslavement there are.
Right.
All right. So all this comes to a head. There's a big meetup. Some other characters have a part to play, which I will not divulge at this time. And eventually what happens is Shulman finds himself imprisoned in the lamp. And that's kind of where our story more or less ends. The thing of it is, though, the genie is never released from the iron bracelet. So he is still imprisoned and trapped and enslaved, more or less. The golem never does quite figure out how to be human, and how to get total control of what she's doing and what she's thinking and feeling. So essentially a slave to thoughts and emotions, if you want to get real close on that.
Right.
But they do strike up a relationship between the two of them that is mutually acceptable to both of them. And Shulman spends, as far as we know at this point, the rest of his eternity locked in the lamp. Because it turns out the only way the genie can be released from the iron bracelet is if either he or Shulman dies. In which case it will kill both of them. So, in the lamp is the only feasible solution. Now, I do have a slight bone to pick about the ending, in that it is neither the genie nor the golem that provides the ultimate resolution.
Oh,
but that's okay.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's a little bone to pick, but I think it's okay given the rest of the story, which I have not filled in at this time.
Okay.
All right. I would say this is probably the best book I've read so far this year.
Well, that's
it's
sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, that's high praise. And then I'm like, well, I really don't know what you've actually read this year. So maybe it's not. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, if the only other book I had read this year was Empire of Imagination, then that would be saying nothing.
Right.
But
that would be
I have
saying
read
the
a few other
dustiest
books
end
this year.
table in Pompeii.
Right. Exactly. But this is probably the best of the batch I've read so far.
Oh, it does sound interesting.
It is extremely interesting, and the summary we were given by Nitsua when he recommended the book was enough to intrigue me. There are a number of themes, even beyond just what I've outlined so far, that go through the book. And I recommend it. If you didn't read it with us, then I certainly recommend you grab it and read it at some point. It's pretty darn good. There is a sequel planned. At least one additional book in what could be a trilogy, I suppose. But I feel like I'm kind of in agreement with Leslie on this one. She said she didn't feel like this book needed a sequel. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I don't think it needs a sequel. But I suspect that if it does get a sequel, it's going to be set with different characters in the same time frame. Or it's going to be set with different characters in a future time frame at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the details in here are especially nice. There's lots of good stuff about the, little Syria and the Jewish community and the Arab community and the people and places and things that were extant in New York at that time. There's lots of, going through New York and, like the trip to Central Park and various other locations and the Upper East Side and, all those things. The little details are very nice. I think it was, let me see here. Engineer 27 wrote into the discussion group. He says, I love that the people at the wedding drink Arak and how high quality Arak really does turn cloudy white when you put regular water in it. So she was very thorough in her descriptions and did seem to know what she was talking about in particular. The little details are what made it stand out. The book, as Minnie pointed out, the book is a slow burn. All right. It starts very calm and relaxed and slow and maintains that for about the first 2/3 of the book. But when you hit that last third, it's not that it starts moving faster necessarily. It's that it picks up in intensity.
Okay.
It just keeps building that intense level. It's I think, a particularly well-paced book for the subject matter and for what it's trying to get across. It's not your classic push, 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 and then relax, and then push, 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 and then relax. It's like it's like I say, it's a slow burn. It's a slow build up to the biggest tension in the book, which happens in the last 2/3 or so, all the way up to the climax, and then it hits you pretty hard with that climax, and then lets it off and kind of wraps up everybody's little story. I would recommend it. I would recommend it to you. I would recommend it to Tiny. I would recommend it to anybody who hasn't actually read it. I don't particularly care if you don't like magical realism, or you don't like fantasy elements in your reality, or you don't like, whatever. I think it's a book worth reading kind of regardless of what your particular preferences are, unless your particular preferences are straight romance novels. Okay, I don't think it's going to be a good fit for that. There's romance in it, but it's not your standard romance. It's not,
Right.
Nobody's admiring anybody else's muscles. Okay.
Well, then pass.
Yeah, I know. I know. But I think it's a beautiful book. It's an excellent read, and I'm super glad Nitsua recommended it to us, because I don't think I'd have read it either otherwise. It would have just been, it's like, I don't know, doesn't sound great, but it's excellent.
Yeah, I will say, I was intrigued enough by the description that I very nearly broke down and was going to say, oh, all right, I'll do the book club thing again. Mm-hmm. Though in the end, I realized that would be a bad job and a bad idea and overcommitting myself. But it is on my list. I do plan to check it out later.
Good.
So
good. Yeah, it's very much about what you enslave yourself to and being an outsider trying to fit in the most extreme outsider way possible. So if those are themes that sound interesting to you, it's got the whole immigrant experience and the whole 9 yards there. Read it. It's good. Pay attention to this writer. This is her first book. It's excellent, and I look forward to seeing more books from her. There you go. That's the summary. You got any questions, sir?
Not really, no. Especially because I'm wary of giving myself any more spoilers than you have already given now, because I would like to read it at some point.
Okay.
Though I recently discovered that I'm sort of a fan of magical reality myself, which I did not realize. Tiny and I, a few months back, watched this movie, A Winter Tale, or A Winter's Tale, which was based on a book. And I have to say the movie was not great. A lot of people did not care for it. And the movie it's the movie version of a book. And it is 1920s New York. I guess that's just the place where you set your magical reality. Except it's also set in modern New York, because there's a little bit of time travel going on. And it is more focused on angels and demons, so the war between heaven and hell. Kind of that's their magical reality that they're playing with. So, and it's a very interesting story, and it is a book that I'm currently also not in the middle of reading. It's on the list. But the movie, it was widely considered to be a book that could not be filmed. It was one of those, it was for years people were talking about turning it into a movie. The movie was in development hell for a while, and ultimately Akiva Goldsmith, he made the movie. And by all rights, by most assessments, people say he proved everyone right. It is unfilmable. But I actually did enjoy the movie somewhat. And it's a very pretty movie. And Tiny enjoyed it as well. It's very romantic. It's very sad. All the things you would like from a period piece magical reality movie. It dealt with obviously very different themes, and I'm not going to launch into a long description of it now, but at some point when I read the book, I'll probably tell you more about it.
We had a over on the Goodreads side, we had a small discussion of who you would cast in a movie of this book. And I came up with Gal Gadot as the Gollum.
Okay.
Oded Fehr as the genie. Mandy Patinkin as the rabbi. Eric Avari as Arbili. And Steve Buscemi as Shalman.
Okay. I was accepting everything you just said until Steve Buscemi.
Well, take a look at Steve Buscemi.
I have seen Steve Buscemi, sir.
And when you read the book, you will see why.
Yeah, but it's Steve Buscemi.
I understand that.
Like, I don't care how closely he matches the character. It's still the handicap of it's Steve Buscemi.
No, I think he can do it. It's because there's that touch of madness that I think he can pull off. Oh, whatever. Disagree with me. See if I care. You go over and make your own casting list then.
Based on a book I have not read yet.
That's right. That's the best way to do it. They do it in Hollywood all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So go get that book if you have not read it. Please do. Please do. That's a very good book to read. Our next book, sir. The next book we will be reading, starting at the time of this recording today, is called Hoax, A History of Deception, 5,000 Years of Fakes, Forgeries, and Fallacies.
Damn it.
This is one of those books that it's by Ian Tattersall, by the way. and some other guy whose name I don't remember. That's terrible. But anyway, it's one of those books which is kind of that collection of facts thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's done in such a way that they're broken down and discussed in a larger sense in their sort of impact and influences and that kind of stuff. Each individual entry is not too terribly long, and the book is only 256 pages itself. But I just thought it would be nice just to kind of go through something that was a little lighter.
Yeah.
And a little easier read as we start summer and people are going on vacation and all that kind of stuff. And just read through it and pick out what we like, what we don't like, and just have a little discussion about that kind of thing. It's got all kinds of hoaxes in it. I am a little, I guess, a little tiny bit disappointed in it because I did flip through the index and I don't think I saw anything about stuff like the Piltdown Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stuff. But they do have stuff on Bigfoot in there and various scams and like the Thomas Jefferson wine and all that kind of stuff. So there's a wide variety of things in there. And it's all, of course, you know, through Ian Tattersall's sort of lens, being that he is a curator at the American Museum of Natural History.
Mm-hmm.
And his co-author is Peter Nevremont, I guess. I don't know how that's pronounced.
I would like to point out that you have chosen a book. I'm still not joining the reading club right now. I'm busy writing my own book right now. You have chosen a book that is actually on my Amazon wish list from a month ago. Well,
there you go.
So I see what you're trying to do. It still will not work. But you're getting closer.
All right. I'll bet you nobody can guess what January's read will be.
What? Nope. How do you already know what January's book will be?
Because I've spoken with the author and have been assured this book will be available at that time.
Oh, now I'm very intrigued.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, I understand he funded it already, so that's fine.
Oh God, no.
That's another discussion for another time because we are, ladies and gentlemen, entirely out of time.